Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the most magical time of the year to be a bass fisherman. Well, one of the most magical, that is, and that is fall time bass fishing. Today guys, we're going to take a nosedive in to fall time bass fishing, but more specifically fall time topwater bass fishing. As you guys know, one of my favorite things to do out of anything is throw a topwater. There's just something about that split second between when they blow up on the topwater and you set the hook and you feel the weight of the fish. That split second between the weight of that fish registering in your brain and then blowing up on that topwater, it's just like, it's like a fix that I just chase. I love topwater fishing. Any type of topwater fishing. I could be throwing a freaking jitterbug and if they're blowing up on it, I'm gonna love it. So today we're going to dive into fall topwater fishing specifically. You know, you could topwater fish really throughout the whole year. Anytime throughout the year you could topwater fish. However, fall time topwater fishing is going to be a little bit different than say your summertime or your early spring topwater fishing especially. So today we're going to dive in to my 4 favorite styles or different baits to topwater fish in the fall time. So my first bait selection for fall time topwater fishing, probably no surprise to you guys, is Whopper Ploppers or any type of plopping style bait, whether it be the Larry Dalberg River to Sea Whopper Plopper, or whether it be something like this one here, which is a Berkley Choppo that recently came out. You know, one of the lakes around here has a lot of underwater bluffs and rocks especially, and what those bass are going to do with the help of the wind is they're going to push all the shad up against the bluffs into little crevices where they can just ambush them, and the shad get pushed up against the wall, and they just ambush them. It's almost like if say someone was to corner you, like in high school, there's, you know, those high school fights, if someone was to corner you in the corner and it get, you know, real intimidating in your face, it's basically what the bass do to the shad. They push them up, get them all congregated, and then they can just have a feeding frenzy. And so you can go down those types of rock banks and bluff walls with a Whopper Plopper, even around docks, just anywhere where there's structure, and throw a Whopper Plopper, and it's going to imitate shad, and they're going to blow up on it thinking it's, you know, a big shad if you're throwing the big size, or you're throwing the little one. They're going to blow up on it and eat it just like they would shad underneath the water. So when you're throwing a Whopper Plopper, you know, rod, reel, line is really important. What I recommend is, what I like to throw it on is around a 7.2 medium heavy. You want something with a little bit of tip, but you want that backbone, because especially if you're throwing this big one, that's a pretty big bait, and you can see those trebles. Those trebles are pretty big. So you need that tip to, almost like if you're deep cranking, you want that tip so when they eat it, they're not going to pull the trebles out, because you're not setting the hook with this bait. But what I do is when they come up and eat it, I just speed my reel up just a little bit, and that's going to help hook them. And then I got that backbone to be able to control the fish and not let him dog me, I dog him. But that tip is going to allow for me to not pull the treble hooks out, and it's going to allow them to eat it all the way. For your reel, I like a 7-to-1 gear ratio, just because a lot of times I may be burning it down the bank, or if they blow up on it and they run at me and they put a bunch of slack in my line, I need that higher gear ratio to be able to reel real fast and catch up to them. So I like a 7-to-1. You can get away with a 6-to-3, but I think a 7-to-1 is just perfect for this type of application. As far as line goes, I like 30 or 50 pound braided line. I normally will just go with 50 for the sole reason that it's a little thicker, and so it's not going to dig into itself on your reel. A lot of times, you guys have probably noticed if you've been throwing 30-pound line, when you go to cast, your bait will go out there and then your reel will just stop, and you got a loop or something in your line. Going with a little bigger diameter line is going to help alleviate that. 30-pound line is just fine though, but I normally just throw 50. Guys, as far as line brands go, you can use Power Pro is a real popular one. Spider Wire is a real popular one. But recently, I think last year actually, Berkley came out with Berkley X9 braid. And I really like this line. It's pretty inexpensive. I think you can pick up a spool for like maybe 15, 17 bucks. I think I got this spool on sale for like 17 bucks. They have it at Walmart too, which is pretty cool. Normally you can get it on sale there. So I like the Berkley X9 braid, and I always choose low vis green. You guys, as far as colors go for my Whopper Ploppers, real simple. I normally either have a translucent color, especially if it's real clear water. This is like baby bass, but it's got a real translucent bottom. I'll throw that. I'll throw bone, which is River to Sea's bone is a yellow, which really isn't bone. If you get another brand, their bone will actually be white. So I'll throw translucent and whites, and then I'll throw something black, especially at nighttime. This black works really well. Alright guys, for the second lure selection is going to have to be a walking style bait or a spook. Like I said, a lot of these bass are going to be pushing shad. If it's early fall, they're going to be pushing them up on points. If you notice, you go out to your lakes late summer, you'll see a lot of real little shad congregating around up in the shallows, on shallow points and stuff like that. And a spook or a walking style bait is a great way to catch these fish. I gotta set these down. I'm getting hooked here. As far as rods go for throwing a spook, I normally will just throw it on the same rod that I throw my Whopper Plopper on, just because the rod I use has just the right amount of backbone, but it also has enough tip where I can walk baits like this without any worry or any problem at all. So I will just normally use the same rod that I throw a Whopper Plopper on to throw my spooks. Reels are going to be the same, 7-to-1 gear ratio. You're making long casts. If you're casting across a point and you're working the spook, and over here they start blowing up, you need to be able to reel that in real fast, make a cast over there, and be able to walk it. So 7-to-1 gear ratio is what I like to use. As far as line goes, guys, I like to use the Berkley X9. Like I said earlier, I use 30 or 50 pound for my spooks as well. The only thing that I do different, and I learned this with throwing a popper, a buddy of mine showed me, and I implemented it into my spooks as well, is you guys ever have problems with your braid getting twisted around your treble hooks, and you reel your bait in and you're sitting here shaking it like this trying to get your line off? Yeah, I had that problem too. So what I started doing is I take my Berkley X9, my main line, and about a foot before I tie my bait on, I take some monofilament or copolymer, anything like that. This is P-Line Fluoro Clear. This is 15 pound. Normally I'll use 12, but I couldn't find any 12, so I just grabbed 15. So what it'll end up being is I have my Berkley X9, my main line, or whatever braid you choose. You have that coming down from your reel. Then you have about a foot or two of the monofilament or copolymer line, and then that is what you tie your walking bait or your spook onto, is the monofilament. So you still get that braid where you're still gonna have that low stretch, but you have about a foot of monofilament and it has a lot of stretch in it. And that's going to prevent the braid from getting wrapped around your treble hooks, and it's also gonna help them eat it a little bit more. So colors for your spooks, guys, doesn't matter too much. Something shad patterned, because you are trying to imitate shad, and you at least want to be close as possible. And a lot of times in the fall time, your lakes are going to get clearer, and you want something that is going to have a lot of flash, but is going to look as natural as possible. Alright guys, so the next bait I want to talk to you guys about, can you guess? Can you hear that? Yep, you guys probably guessed it, is a buzzbait. Another really good bait to imitate a shad. They're going to be pushing, like I said, pushing shad up against the rocks. So going down the bank parallel in this is another really good way to catch fish. Guys, there's so many different types of buzzbaits out there. You got your War Eagle, your Zorro. There's so many different types of buzzbaits, but in my mind, guys, there's only one buzzbait that matters, and that's the Accent Jacob Wheeler Original. It's an amazing buzzbait. You could take it right out of the pack and throw it, and it's gonna squeak perfectly. You know, a big thing with buzzbaits a lot of guys talk about is, oh, when you buy a new buzzbait, you know, there's a break-in period. You gotta throw it for, you know, so many casts to break it in, to get the blade to squeak just right, or, you know, I've known guys that will take it and they'll be driving down the road and they'll hang their buzzbaits on the top of their truck so that the wind's blowing it and it's getting wore out, because a lot of times those buzzbaits will squeak better the more wore out they are. With the Accent, guys, there's no break-in period. You take it out of the box, you tie it on your buzzbait rod, and you go out there and you just chuck it along. It doesn't matter. Guys, as far as rod and reels go for the Accent buzzbait, I like a 7-foot medium heavy. I like to have, you know, a pretty good tip with just a little bit of backbone. I like a little bit heavier of a rod than say what I'm throwing my walking and my Whopper Plopper baits on. But you still want that tip, because a lot of times, like lakes around here, I'll be taking it and I'll be skipping it under bushes, I'll be skipping it under docks, around docks, but I still like that 7-foot because it allows me to still be able to pitch it around, make short casts, roll casts with it to real short targets. But that 7-foot medium heavy still has enough backbone where with this, unlike a say a spook or Whopper Plopper where you let them eat it and you just kind of reel into them, with this, they eat this, I'm jacking them. You set the hook and you keep reeling. Speaking of setting the hook and keep reeling, I like a 7-to-1 gear ratio or 7-3-to-1. A lot of my topwater lures I throw higher gear ratios on just because they eat it, and when you get them, you want to get them to the boat as fast as possible, or if you're fishing and they start blowing up somewhere else, you want to get that back as fast as possible to make another cast. With a higher gear ratio, it allows you to be able to reel real fast when you need to, but also be able to slow it down. If you're throwing like a 6-3-to-1 and you need it there, they want it sped up, you're going to be over here wearing yourself out because you're reeling so fast to get it to the speed they want. With that 7-to-1 or 7-3-to-1, you can slow it down if they want it real slow, or just reel normal, and you're gonna be bringing it at a pretty good rate of speed so that you can cover both ends of the spectrum and you're not wearing yourself out. As far as line goes on my buzzbaits, opposed to a lot of people, I know a lot of people like to throw braid. They'll throw 30 or 50 pound braid, and you can do that, and I will sometimes, especially if I'm throwing it in thicker cover. But as far as most of the time goes, I like to throw it on 17 or 20 pound fluorocarbon. I'll use either Berkley 100% fluorocarbon or Seaguar Invisx or Seaguar Red Label. This right here is 17 pound Seaguar Invisx. It doesn't matter between those two lines. I'll just throw it on 17 or 20. I have just as much confidence with both 17 and 20, so it's just kind of whatever I got laying around. As far as tricking my buzzbaits out, I don't do much. I do take the skirts off. I don't like to throw them with a skirt, but I do like to put a trailer on my buzzbait. This right here is a Zoom horny toad in white. And to talk about white, to go off some colors here, in the fall time, that's the only color I throw is white right there. You're imitating shad, white's gonna imitate shad the best. Another trailer that I like besides the Zoom horny toad is the Lake Fork frog. This frog has a little bit bigger feet than the horny toad. They stick out a little bit more. The horny toad's more streamlined. If I'm trying to really slow roll it, I'll throw this just because you're gonna have to throw this. You're gonna have to throw the buzzbait a little bit slower with this just because it has so much more drag with these longer legs. If you're trying to burn it, I'll throw this. And guys, with your buzzbaits, if you notice your fish in your lake are getting a lot of pressure or they're getting finicky, Accent has a Jacob Wheeler Finesse buzzbait, which is a little bit smaller. It's not as loud, big, and bulky. And so if you notice your fish are getting a lot of pressure, you can throw that Finesse buzzbait instead of the original, because the original is a little bit bigger. So it's just kind of whatever your fish are wanting. You gotta let them tell you what they want. All right, guys, now to everyone's favorite, at least my favorite, fall time bait is a lot of your lakes that have grass, a lot of lakes around here that have grass. You guys know my favorite thing to do is throw a frog. I love to throw a frog so much. You know, in the fall time, a lot of your grass is gonna start to get topped out, which means it's just a canopy. And so all underneath is hollow, so there's gonna be a lot of fish roaming underneath there. It's a good place for them to sit underneath the mat, sit on corners of mats, ambush shad as it swims by. As far as frog fishing goes, I'm gonna give you guys some great tips here, just because frog fishing is like my bread and butter. So as far as rod and reel goes, you're fishing heavy mats. You want a pretty stiff rod. I would not go anything under a 7-foot heavy. That's pushing it too. I frogged with a 7-foot heavy a lot, and I felt like I lost more fish before I moved up to a bigger rod. Here in Indiana, there's some places that there's some pretty thick mats, but there's also some places that there's not. So my favorite all-around frog rod is a 7.2 heavy. But you want to make sure it's got a good tip. This has got a really soft tip. It allows me to be able to work the frog. You want your tip to be soft so you can work your frog and walk it, because you're going to do that walk to dog motion just like with your spook. That soft tip also allows you to be able to skip your frog. You're skipping around docks, maybe skipping over some overhanging limbs. That soft tips allows you to load your rod up. When you bring it around, it allows you to load it up and be able to propel that bait up under there. If you're throwing it with an absolute broomstick, your rod's gonna have no flex to it when you go to load it up. So it's gonna be a lot harder to skip, and you're gonna have some trouble. So my favorite is a 7.2 heavy with a fast tip. If I'm fishing really heavy crap, I'll go all the way up to a 7.4 heavy with a fast tip. I know some people frog with a 7.6, 7.9 heavy. You can do that, but just for me, I'm 6'1", so you got to think about your height too with your rod, because you're walking it, so you don't want to be slapping the water. So a 7.2 or 7.4 heavy with fast tip for me is perfect. Guys, when you're frogging, your reel is just as important as your rod. You want a high gear ratio, but you don't want too high. You don't want to throw like a 10-to-1 gear ratio, because that's not going to have enough power for you to be able to crank those fish in out of the mat. A 7-3-to-1 is my favorite. This is a old Shimano Corrado. I like that because I like the bigger reel, and when I set the hook, I have something big to grab onto. It's got a really big handle, so it allows me to just crank and crank and crank. And it has an extra wide spool, so I'm allowed to make really long casts. Guys, as far as line goes, you are not going to want to throw anything. Please don't do this. Don't throw 20 or 30 pound braid. You do not want to throw anything under 50 pound braid. 50 or 65 pound braid is the best. If you're making really long casts, 50 pound braid is better just because it has a little bit smaller diameter. You're going to be able to cast further. You're going to get better casting distance. If that's not a big deal to you and you're just flipping and pitching real close distance, you know, just little roll casts, or you got an extra wide spool like this, you're not worried about making long casts, or you're not worried about running out of line, 65 pound braid is going to be the best. I got 50 here. When I first started frogging, I threw 50, then I switched over to 65. But I bought some 50 because I might switch back and see if I can get some better casting distance, see what I like the best. But on here I got 65. So 50 or 65 pound braid is crucial. You have to have it. A lot of times, as you can see, this braid's really worn out. It's got that white color to it. You can take a Sharpie and take your line and rub your Sharpie along your line like that, and that's going to color it black. That's going to make it invisible to the fish. I'm not sure that it really matters. It's just kind of I guess an OCD thing for me. I like to have the line as dark as possible so they can't see it. I don't think it matters, but guys, as far as frog colors go, as you can see, my frog box is pretty full. Actually not as full as it used to be. But as far as frog colors go and frog styles and brands, there's so much to talk about. I can make a whole video just on frogs alone. But for the sake of time, we're going to cut that down and only talk about a few. First color, you got your whites, your all white frog, your shad colors, and you guys got to remember, the top of the frog, it doesn't matter. The only thing they're gonna see is the bottom. You can get all these pretty colors here, and they look all nice, and that's good and all, but it looks good to you, but the fish is only gonna see the bottom. So you want your, like I said earlier about the walking baits and buzz baits and stuff, you want white, because you're around a lot of shad. So shad pattern frogs. This has got some green and white in the tail. This is an all white frog. Is really good in the fall time. And if you don't think color matters, or maybe you're fishing at night, that's when I'll go to my black frogs. This one is a black and blue frog. This one is more of a translucent black. You can kind of see through it a little bit. So if you're fishing at night or low light, or they're just maybe not eating that white frog, that's when you need to switch over to a black one. In my all-time favorite frog color really is this color right here called Cricket. It's got a brown back, brown and black legs. The bottom is white with yellow. That's my all-time favorite frog. I just have my utmost confidence in that, and quite a few of mine in this box here are that. And as you noticed, all my frogs that I've just showed you are all pointed nose. Those are your walking frogs. The frogs you're gonna cast out there and you're gonna walk back to the boat. So another type of frog that we have is a popping frog. Same thing goes with that. Your shad colors, your naturals, your blacks. Right here we have a Spro Bronze Eye, all white frog. Right here we have I don't even know what kind of brand this is, but it's another popping frog, and it's got a silver bottom with some orange. That's another good color. And here is another frog. I have no idea what the brand is. It's an all black frog with some black and white legs. Now those are your two main types of frogs, and there is a couple other types of frogs. Like right here, we have a frog with a Whopper Plopper tail on the back. If I'm throwing that, I always throw white, just because that Whopper Plopper, just like my Whopper Ploppers, is going to imitate shad. So I always want to throw white with that. There's that kind. There's like the Booyah Toad Runner that's got a tail on the back. Also can be called a buzz frog, but that's something you just reel and that tail's going to kick. Here's one in brown. And then another type of frog is your buzz frogs, where you maybe take like you take the Lake Fork frog and you put an EWG hook on it and you cast out there and you just reel it back. Or your frogs like your top toads, where you take a standard frog hook and you have this frog here. You just rig up on the hook, you throw that out, you're just gonna reel it back. So those are really your three main types of frogs. As far as brands go, you can't go wrong with Spro. Spro's a good brand. They're probably the most well-known frog brand. Savage Gear makes a good frog. They were my favorite frog for the longest time. You got Booyah Pad Crashers. Those are probably, I would say the Booyah Pad Crasher is probably the best all-around frog. They have what I think is the sharpest hooks out of any frog I used by far. I haven't lost too many fish with the Booyah Pad Crasher, and they're really easy to walk. So if you're just starting out frog fishing, I would definitely recommend the Booyah Pad Crasher. Now, a couple modifications you can do to your frog is trim the legs. As you can see on this one's right out of the box, and this is a trimmed up frog. Trim your legs up. If you leave your legs real long, they're gonna sit back on the mat, and you're gonna have fish short striking on your legs. You trim your legs up, they don't sit so far back. So when they blow up on the legs, your hooks are right there. So it's a lot easier for them to get hooked. So trim your legs up. Another modification you can do is you can take a pair of pliers and bend these hooks out just a little bit. You can tip the hooks outward just a little bit. That's going to allow you to, the fish blows up on it. Say you're missing some fish and you bend those hooks out, you're gonna get a lot better hook set. Your frog's not gonna be as weedless if you bend your hooks out. You might be picking off muck every few casts, but if they're kind of not getting it all the way, that's a modification you can do to it right there. So that's it, guys. That is my 4 favorite baits for fall time fishing. You got your walking style baits, your spooks, you got your frogs, got your Whopper Ploppers, and you got your Buzzbaits. Those are my 4 favorite fall time baits, and if they're gonna eat a topwater at your lake, they're gonna eat one of those 4 baits. I can almost promise you. You put it in front of a fish, they're gonna eat it. I know this was a pretty long video, but I really want to get as much information out there and tell you guys a bunch of the tricks that I use. Like I said, if you want to see a really in-depth frog video, or maybe a really in-depth Whopper Plopper video or Buzzbait video, let me know. I can also do that as well. This video kind of just went over briefly, you know, what you want to the gear you want to throw for a spook, the gear you want to throw for a frog, the gear you want to throw for a buzzbait. Just went over it briefly, so if you want to see it more in depth, let me know down in the comments. Also, guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and also hit the little bell right next to it. That'll give you a notification every time I post a new video. That'll really help me out, and that will allow you guys to get on the videos as soon as they're uploaded. So you guys will be one of the first to watch them and check them out. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you checking out the video and sticking through it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.